again. Okay, yep, that looks like it's. Panopto apparently relies on the audio stream for doing all kinds of timing information, which means if it fails to stop the audio device, it totally loses its mind. And that's fun. Anyways, all right. Other questions, first of all?
No, yeah. The PyCharm version that we have to use for writing the Python code, we have to use the professional one, or we have to use the community?
For PyCharm, you can download either version. You can download the professional. You can download the community version. I actually have the professional version installed here. And what's nice is signing up for the JetBrains student account, you get free access to be able to use the professional version. So certainly, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, I don't know if I mentioned, or just a reminder, next week, since it's the middle of the semester, so we will have our midterm exam. The midterm exam will be a take-home exam, okay, so you'll have like about a week to kind of perform do various tasks and all that. Basically kind of do a lot of the stuff that we've done up to now. So that'll be that. Questions on any of that?
Isn't there a time duration, or the whole week is a time duration?
Right. Yep.
Starting from the next week.
Yeah, you'll see, right. So it'll be posted. Most likely, I should have it posted Monday.
No, I'm asking about the exam time duration. Is it a specific, or the whole week is the time duration?
You have right. It's like an assignment. So basically, you have just until the due date for it. Okay. Yes.
You have to explain about how to use CFN init and HubDaemon in the Ubuntu, because we were not able to do that.
Yes. So right. So okay. So the extra credit, you mean? Yeah. Right. I wasn't able to get the update working in Ubuntu either. That was why it was extra credit. I tried two of the options that were listed there and kind of massaged them in different ways.
Around 10 to 15.
Yeah, and just wasn't working. Yeah,
Not working.
yeah, I wasn't able to get it working either. So
So like anyone who has submitted the assignment and his or her CFN update is
Yes, this guy.
did somebody get some? Well, I mean, I guess we'll see. Once it's graded, we'll find out whether someone was able to crack the code. Yeah, if there is actually a workable solution, then we can talk about that. I'll talk about that in class, and give credit where credit is due. Okay, so today I want to do something that hopefully you think is fun. Initially, it's gonna look like it's not fun for a couple of reasons. Okay, so I mean, so we've been doing a lot of stuff with CloudFormation and all of that. Look, I know you're IT students. I know so many times IT students are like, I'm not a programmer. Okay, first of all, that's not true. You are a programmer. If you look at the 5 pillars of IT, programming is actually one of the pillars. And then it turns out like two of the other pillars also involve programming, because like one's like web design, and by web design they actually mean like the programming side of the web, and so other stuff too. So yeah, you are programmers, but I understand it can be painful. It can be challenging. We're going to look at some programming. We're going to use Python because Python is certainly a gentler way of doing that. How many people have done Python programming? Yeah, I thought there was like a few handful of people, and again, so if you haven't done Python, that's fine, because hopefully this should be enough of an introduction to Python to be able to use this stuff. So let me propose the following task. Suppose I gave you for an assignment or for your exam the following: write a program that takes images as input and then tells how many people are in the image, what their gender is, what their mood is, etc. Or given an image, identify what celebrities are in the image. Or given an image, find what things are in the image. For instance, are there flowers, is it a house, etc. Right? How many people are going to show up at my office with the ARC request to drop? right? I mean, realistically, what? So here's the thing. The task that I've just described, most of the time would be very difficult. I mean, essentially, what you end up having to do is build your own machine learning system where you do things like you take thousands of images, you have to have some person or people sit down and manually tag the image to say, okay, this image, there's a face here and here's a face there, or this image has the following things in it, etc. And then you sort of run it through these machine learning situations and hopefully get to a solution that actually works. Well, the good news is AWS has done that for you. Okay. Oh, actually, I might need to. It's thinking very hard. Okay. So, Amazon's Rekognition, spelled in this very annoying way. This is actually fairly new. I stumbled on it about a week or two ago, and so it turns out it actually came out. I think it was released in November of last year, so it's almost a year old. And basically, notice, so it's deep learning based image recognition, right? Search, verify, organize millions of images. Okay. So the tasks that I've actually explained that I described to you in terms of this hypothetical assignment are actually made fairly easy to do using Amazon Rekognition. How easy? 13, 14 lines of code easy. Okay. So if that doesn't motivate you, or you think that's kind of cool, well, I don't know what's going to. All right. So let's take a look at using this and all of that. So the if you go through the resources and things like that. So the Amazon APIs generally you can access using a whole host of different languages. So for instance, there are, you can actually access the various APIs using JavaScript. In fact, there's actually two separate development kits for it. So one for running on the server versus one for running JavaScript on within the browser. There are Java APIs, etc. And as I said, there's actually Python bindings for this as well. Okay, so if you looked at the website yesterday, you probably saw these various links here that I've added for things that you generally that we're going to sort of need for this. Oh, I actually didn't. I didn't provide the link there? Thought I did. Okay, well that's fine. Okay. Bodo 3. Is basically Python bindings for AWS. And it will allow you to access and control nearly everything in AWS. Okay. So like we saw before, where we saw we could use, for instance, the CLI, the command line interface, and we could actually spin up instances and do all these various things. You can actually do that programmatically from within Python as well, using Bodo. Okay. So it takes a little bit of setup, right? So in the class prep stuff, you'll see, right? So I said basically get the latest version of Python. In fact, Python 3. So that's right now it's Python 3.6.2 is the latest version of Python. So you install that on your system. You have all of that. You'll also generally want the AWS CLI installed. I think you can technically get away without it, but having it there actually isn't a bad idea. And then I also recommended that you use PyCharm. You don't technically for doing Python development, you don't have to use PyCharm. Python itself comes with its own little interpreter and all of that, right? So actually, right. So once you've installed Python, you automatically get. Why are you taking so long to start this? Come on. Yes.
I think the Python release just had next version already,
6.6 is also out.
6.6, then get that one. Whatever it is. Yeah, the 6.3, yeah, whatever it is. Oh, this is interestingly. There it is, yes. So idle is basically what gets installed automatically when you install Python, and it is both a Python interpreter in the sense that, notice I can type arbitrary Python expressions and simply have that evaluated, and I can also do things like create files and actually edit Python files and so forth from here. So it's not bad for sort of quick development and all of that. However, if you're doing anything kind of more serious, generally speaking, you'll want something like PyCharm. How many people have used like one of the JetBrains IDEs in the past? Okay, right. The JetBrains makes insanely good IDEs. They actually started off making IntelliJ, which basically is an IDE for Java, which has largely been considered sort of the best IDE for Java development. And it took me a long time before I actually started playing around with it. And then the more I kind of played around, I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty good. So it is actually quite good, nice environment. All right. So a couple of things that we're going to basically need. So as I said, so Bodo 3 basically is the Python bindings that we're going, or the Python library that we're going to need to be able to access the various AWS services. Okay. In terms of installing and configuring, you can see they do have links here. So this thing called pip basically is a tool for installing Python libraries. And you can actually access this, or you can run this in a couple of different ways. You can run it from the command line. I'll also show you. So here I'm going to start up PyCharm. Now, the first time you start up PyCharm, you won't actually get this. So this is opening sort of the last project that I had that I was editing in this. So I'll show you what this looks. Come on. File, close project. There we are. Okay. So this is roughly what it looks like when you first start it up. Okay, so essentially I'm going to go ahead and I'll create a new project. If you're dealing with the professional version like I am, you'll have a whole bunch of options here. In the case of the community edition, their free edition, you won't quite have that many options. All right, so let me do a couple of things. One is let me actually just find a place to put this. I guess I'll throw it in. There, and let me give the folder a name. So I'll call it Recog. All right. Then you'll notice I have options for selecting the various interpreters. So it turns out I actually have both Python 2 and Python 3 installed. I'm going to use the latest version of Python 3, and I'll go ahead and click Create. Okay. So there's my empty Python, my empty Python project, and you can see that basically this is going to essentially it'll do the typical kind of creates this .idea folder where it essentially stores the various IDE related files and so forth. So we need to get Bodo installed. What we can do is, so if I do Control Alt and Shift, Control Alt and S, that actually brings up the settings, and then I can go to my project settings right here. So notice there's Project Recog, and there's this option for the project interpreter. So when I click on that, it opens up this sort of this little dialog here, and this is where I can install the packages that I want to use. Now, just a couple of notes. If you are a Python programmer and have played around with systems called virtual end, you actually have the ability to do that. So notice there is create virtual end. Basically, what that is, you can either install your packages kind of globally, or you can basically kind of create a ad hoc development environment just for a particular project. So doing that, you create a virtual environment, you say, okay, and then you install just the libraries for that particular project into that. So you can do that as well. I'm going to actually just install them globally here. So the way of adding this, notice I just click the little plus sign here, and I can search for Bodo 3, right? And so it finds yes, Bodo 3. Notice it says yes, that's the AWS SDK for Python, and I'll go ahead and install the package. Right, so it basically contacts the appropriate online source for that, downloads the appropriate dependencies and so forth. And so once it's done, you'll kind of see a little message that says yes, you're good to go, and it's all installed and all of that. It's thinking very hard.
Sir,
Yes.
like, while creating a new project, it showed pure Python.
It showed what's that?
Pure Python. So,
Right.
Is there a difference between pure Python or Python?
No. So when they mention pure Python as opposed to Python projects using other libraries, right? So some of the other options were basically things for using various libraries, for instance, for creating a Python web system and stuff like that. Boy, why is it thinking so hard about this? It has to install a little bit, but anyways. There we go. Right, so package Bodo 3 installed successfully. The other package that we're actually going to make use of is called requests. Now, what's nice about doing it the way that I'm doing, which is basically installing these packages globally, is once I've installed them, then I'm good to go. I don't have to do this every time I create a new project and all of that. So I want the requests library. What the requests library does is it essentially makes it a little bit easier to grab content off of basically from online. So if you want, so in our case, what we're going to do is we'll do some things where we'll actually just grab pictures from online and feed those into Rekognition. And so requests basically makes it easier for us to do that. All right. Well, that's thinking and installing that and all of that. I'm going to. Yep. Yeah. There we go. Good. Okay. So that's there, and right, and so you notice now this list actually is a bit longer because you can see. So for instance, when I installed Bodo 3, one of the dependencies is Bodo Core, so it installed that, and you can see some various other things listed here as well. All right, I actually want a couple of other files here, so let's see. Basically two things. So here I have an images folder for some local, I didn't actually want to move that, I just wanted to copy that. Grab that, paste that over there, and then I also want image helpers.py. And I'll talk about this stuff in a minute. So there I've just kind of added those into to my project. Okay. One other thing that we need to do, and this is basically for Bodo, okay? So just like with the AWS CLI, where you needed to do the configure step, if you haven't already done that, you need to do that for Bodo to be able to work. Okay, so if you don't essentially create or get your AWS credentials and insert those in the appropriate place, then Bodo essentially won't work. Okay, so let me just kind of walk you through that real quick, right? So here I'm already logged into Amazon. Let me go to IAM. And so here what I'm going to do is basically, so I want to go to users, and I can say I want to add a user, right? And so did I have? Probably should have. Okay, I already have a demo user, so let me just call this, because I'm ultimately going to delete it, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, so I'll just call it delete me, right? Then, and so we kind of talked about this before, right? So in terms of the access for the user, you can select a couple of different things. So in my case, really the only reason I want this user around is so that I can use, for instance, Bodo or the AWS CLI. So in that case, all I want is programmatic access here. Notice I'm not enabling the management console access. So that is, I can't use this user to log into the Amazon console. Instead, I can only use it from those other tools. Okay, go to permissions. Basically, so I'm going to go to existing permissions here. And while I could, certainly I could, you know, you'll see there's good degree of granularity here to select specifically just the permissions that you want to allow. I'm just going to kind of go for the whole enchilada here and give it administrator access. Oop. Yeah. So, there we go. My computer's really acting stupid. All right, so there's that. I can go ahead and do that. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll go ahead and create the user. Okay, and once it creates the user, basically it gives me, so it does a couple of things, right? So notice we have our access key, we also have our secret key listed here. Come on. And I can download those credentials in a CSV file, which is what I'm going to do. All right. So let me make sure we have that. Yes, credentials.csv. So, from the command line, basically normally you would run, if you're really only dealing with sort of one user for this to sort of access, you do AWS configure like that, and then basically just enter in the information, and so you have sort of that one user. I already have sort of, terminate batch up, yeah. I already have a user created where I haven't revealed the credentials, because to show you this, I'm going to have to reveal these credentials. And so in that case, I have one of two options. Either I can kill all of you, or I can basically throw away those credentials. Since I don't really want to get that messy, basically what I'm going to do is we'll say configure, and then I can do basically create another profile, and I can give it whatever name. I'm just going to go with the same name that I had there. So that way I can kind of create this, and it'll be easy for me to throw away those credentials after this. I don't have to worry about kind of blurring out things in the video or stuff like that. I do not know why my machine is being so slow today. All right, there we go. Right, so the access key, right? So as I said, here in credentials.csv, basically you have a couple of things here, right? So notice here is here's the access key itself, right? And so I'll copy that, just come over to here and paste that in, right? And then the secret key, right? So this is the one that I shouldn't actually show everyone and all of that again. right? So there's my secret key. Okay, I can set it to a default region if I want. I'll just leave that. And now basically I have those credentials added in, and I should be able to make use of things like Bodo and the CLI. Okay, so that's essentially that process there as well. Okay. One other thing, right? So you'll notice up here there's this I am users sign in link. So AWS will sort of auto generate that for you. I have a grease monkey script in here that basically sort of is blurring that so you guys can't see it, security through obscurity. But basically you can kind of customize your own link and all of that if you want as well to kind of make that easier. Generally, right, so you'll notice, so I have a few users listed here, right? Basically, minimally you want 2 users, okay? So you have the original account that essentially you signed up for. That's your root user, okay? Once you've created that, basically the first thing you should do is come in and actually add a separate user that generally has administrative rights, and use that account as your basic login and default and all of that. So when you go to that sort of custom link for logging in, it'll have your main account and then it'll say enter username. All right. So in my case, I use this account here, and then I'm able to basically log in just under that user and use those credentials and not be accessing it via my root account. What that does mean, one of the things that I don't have under that account are, for instance, the billing information. So I can't actually access that. There, I would have to log in from my root account. Right. So just to give you kind of an idea of that. All right. Let's test this out, right? So how do we actually figure out whether this stuff is working and everything? So once you've kind of gone through this this whole process, what I want. Weird. It seems sort of I'm missing. Normally there's a window down here for a bunch of stuff that I seem to be missing for some reason. Let's see. All right, I'll run it from here. Sure, that's fine. Probably want to make my font bigger. I'll do it this way. And I'm not getting that. Okay, let's see. I'm sorry, what's that? I haven't yet, right. Yeah, so we'll talk about that. Looking for the option. There is actually an option for making the, there we are. Maybe this is, no, editor. Oh wait, cons now. That's, oh, for crying out loud. All right. Settings, editor, colors and fonts, console font. Okay. Editor. Oh, console font. There we are. Yes. Is that visible or a little bigger maybe? Let's do that. Yes, no? Good, okay. So the Python console is basically a live Python interpreter. So a couple of things, right? So people will say that Python is an interpreted language. As my programming languages teacher properly said, there's really no such thing. There's no such thing as an interpreted language. There's no such thing as a compiled language. That is, there's nothing inherent in a language that makes it either interpreted or compiled. Rather, it's more about how a language tends to be used, right? So most of the time with Python, we tend to deal with an interpreter. A good example of this, take C, right? So C typically is compiled, but there do actually exist C interpreters for masochists. Okay, so the Python console, right? If you haven't sort of dealt with any of these kinds of dynamic or scripting languages, you're really missing out on a whole lot of development fun. Okay, because remember, I mean, the main difference between expert programmers and beginner programmers is the amount of code written that is thrown away. When I'm doing development, right, most of the time, like most developers, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? If you're working in a really good job, most of the time, you're being asked to solve problems that you've never solved before, right? That sometimes nobody else has solved before either. But your paycheck depends on it. Okay, so how do you deal in those kinds of situations, right? You basically sort of write a little bit of code, see what that does, write a little bit of more code, see what that does, right? And sometimes you kind of come up with an idea, maybe spend an hour kind of writing a program, finally realize that, oh, you've painted yourself into a corner, throw that away, right? In the case of compiled language, in the case of dealing with a compiler, I have to keep compiling all that stuff each time. In the case of having an interpreter, if I have an idea or if I wonder, how does this work, I can just try it in the console and not have to worry about creating a separate program and compiling this and running it and all of that. Okay, so really, it's in terms of working with the language and so forth, it really makes your life so much easier. So again, we can enter in arbitrary expressions here and so forth. Let's actually see if Bodo is installed. So first of all, okay, so import allows us to import a Python module to be able to make use of it, right? So right there, the fact that it didn't spit back anything at me tells me that yes, Bodo 3 is in fact installed. Okay, now let's take a look and see if we can actually connect. So I'll say, okay, I'll create a variable called S3, and I'll set that equal to bodo.resource S3. Okay. So right there, again, it's able to do that, and then I can do something like, for instance, I can say, okay, print out. Let's do buckets all. Right. So tell me what buckets I have, right? So buckets all returns this weird S3 buckets collection thing that generally, if we really want to see the contents, we essentially need to iterate over. That's easy enough in Python, right? So it basically looks like this. I can say, okay, for every bucket in S3.all, colon, print the bucket. There's data about my S3 buckets, accessed from Python, right? So it contacted AWS, found out about my buckets, and prints that information. Okay. I can make this into a program, if you will, really easily. So I'm just going to come over to here. I'll right-click on that folder. I'll say, let's create a new Python file. So let me just call this, I'll call it bodo_x. I don't have to put the .py because it will actually do that for me, right? So like I said, we did this stuff. I can actually kind of copy.
So
Yes.
you did not specify any user for the Python.
Right. I didn't have to.
Yeah, so how is it contacting the AWS? With
It
which credentials?
so basically it goes to my credential files and looks for the rule for default. Because before I created the profile that I just created here, I also had another one in there that was that basically was using that is the default rule, and that's basically the credentials that it's actually using. Right. So there's my Python program. Now, people have said, and I think kind of rightly so. And let me make this. People have referred to Python as executable pseudocode. Okay, the syntax is fairly minimal, especially when you compare it to something to the C family of languages. Notice, no braces, right? Python, however, is white space sensitive. Okay, this indentation here is not just for style. That has meaning. If I don't indent the body of the for loop, then it's not part of the body. Okay, so the for loop basically, the syntax there, this is for in, right? So whatever the variable name is, and I can call that whatever I want. I mean, if I wanted to, here I could do refactor, rename. I could call this foo if I really wanted to, right? And be the same thing. And then basically we have a colon for the end of the for part, and then whatever content is supposed to be part of the loop is indented underneath that. Okay, so just tab in, and you're all set. Okay, then I can, just so we can kind of see, I could post something like this, right? So done should only get printed out once. Okay, the first time you go to run one of your files, basically what I'll do is I'll just come over, right-click on the file, and say go ahead and run it. Right. And there it is, it ran my file. Right, once you've done that, notice I actually get that up here. So here it says, oh, okay, there's Bodo EX, and now I can actually just hit the run button to rerun it if I want to. Right. So that's some stuff on S3. Let's just another quick example, right? So for instance, I could say, okay, let's create a variable. I'll call it EC2 because I'm going to deal with that. And again, so we'll deal with resource EC2. And so we'll do a few different things, right? So again, playing around with these things. So, why don't I? Oh, there it is. Yes, now I have it. Okay. Python really does a lot to help you. Okay, here's the thing. I don't particularly like Python. I don't particularly think Python's a really good language. I think they made some weird decisions in terms of language design and all of that. But probably 7 to 8 times out of 10, when I have to throw together a quick script for something, I end up picking up Python. Okay. And there's a couple of reasons for it. One, I mean, as you see, it's very easy to read and so forth. It also the motto in Python is that batteries are included. There are a whole host of libraries just built into Python, in addition to all the extra stuff that you can install, right? So here I actually have a link to the Python's the Python's homepage, and basically you can see, you know, here are the various modules that are built into Python for you. So a few things, right? So as I said, Python has batteries included. It also generally makes it fairly easy to kind of work with things. So for instance, if you want help on something, just ask for it. Right? Help, function name, there it is. Okay. Some other commands that are pretty helpful. So if I have a particular, so for instance, this is a string, right? There's a string. If I wanted to find out what methods there are in the string class or on string objects, I can use dir. And it says, okay, here's all that stuff. Now, notice it kind of prints it out in this long list. If I wanted that printed prettier, there is a pretty printer built into Python. So I could do this. I could say import pretty print, pprint, and then I would have to call it this way. I'd say pprint dot pprint. So the first one's the module name, pprint. The second one's the name of the function, and then basically whatever I wanted pretty printed, like so. Oh, okay. Now I can see sort of all the different function or all the different methods of the string class. Capitalize, count, ends with, blah blah blah. Okay. Now let me show you one other kind of quick pro tip for that. Right. So this is just annoying. Right, pprint.pprint. It's like you're stuttering or something. Right, so what I could do is actually do this. I can say from the pprint module import pprint directly, which means now when I say pprint, incidentally I'm hitting up arrow to go back through the history. I can just do this. Again, fairly handy. So using these kind of combinations of like dir and help on different things and all that make it a lot quicker to kind of figure out what it is that you have to do even before having to sort of Google it or go to the Python library reference and all those kinds of things. All right. So EC2. Right, so I was playing around with this. Let me go ahead and just grab this, drop that down there. Right, and then I can kind of play around with a few things for this. So, for instance, I could say, okay, for every instance in EC2, instances dot all. Right, and then I could do pprint the instance. Right. So pretty printing the instance doesn't really give me that much information. Notice it basically just sort of gives me the ID. However, certainly we could do things like that to be able to get a sense of what fields there are available in the instance itself. And notice we have access to just about everything on the instance, right? There's create image, the ID, the image ID, etc. It's the key pair, etc., etc. Right? So we can inspect the instances and so forth. All right, just to kind of give you an idea. Right. So. Wonder if, yeah, so notice import this name, there it basically added that for me. All right, print. In Python, you can use either double quotes or single quotes for string literals. It's up to you. So just to. So again, you can run this program like that, and so forth. All right, and just one more, right? So I'll do. Let's do. So ID gives me the instance ID, and I can also find out about the state of the instance, right? So if I run that, right, so I can see in this particular region, basically I have these three instances. My three instances are in the stopped state, okay, so they're not actually running. So that gives you kind of hopefully a quick idea of Bodo and all of that. And there's a bunch of examples. You could take a look at the documentation and those kinds of things. But really, what I wanted to do is look at a couple of different things. So as I said, the real thing that we wanted to kind of get at was this stuff of dealing with recognition and being able to kind of poke around with its API. Now, a couple of things here. So let me actually just yeah, it's up. Wait, let me do. Since I'm already logged in this browser. So, to give you this link that I have here, so you'll notice if you're logged into Amazon's console, you'll have access to this. So they actually have demos for a bunch of features of recognition. So here's the labeling, right? So basically here you select this particular image, and you can actually upload whatever image you want, so you can verify that they're not really cheating here. It's not that they handpicked an example and then hard coded these in, right? So notice it identified a skateboard, it identified sport, it identified people, person, human, parking, right? Oh yeah, parking, automobile, car, vehicle, intersection, all the stuff that it basically, that it automatically figured out for that particular image, right? Similarly, I can go here.
So what does the percentage show?
The percentage is its confidence level, right? So it's 91.4% confident this is a city. But notice, as we kind of get down to some of these other ones, okay, coast 51%, marina 50.8%, etc. Okay. And again, you can upload, you can drag and drop photos, etc. Let me just kind of run through a couple of these other ones. Image moderation. I'm not going to show a coding example, and I'm not going to show much about this, but you may want to actually just kind of play around with it. Probably, preferably not on the school's network. So what image moderation basically does is it will find things like, so for instance, this image here that they have, and you notice they kind of have this this nice little blurred option. I'm going to show it. There it is. Right. So there's a woman in a bikini. Notice it actually, in terms of the moderation API, it actually figured out, oh yeah, that's a female and she's in either swimwear or underwear. It can detect full nudity. It can also detect pornography. Again, I leave it to you to play around with those. I don't want to venture into that.
So like it's a more detailed version of the object and the scene.
Right. It basically does some additional things. Facial analysis, right? So notice here, here's an image with a single face. Notice, yes, it looks like a face. Notice, appears to be female. Gives an age range. The emotions appears to be happy. Wearing glasses, wearing sunglasses, right, etc. You can have multiple people in the image.
How did it identify whether the gender of the person?
That's so it identifies the gender based on the training that they did for the image analysis, right? So essentially again through machine learning you gather up thousands of photos, right, and basically tag them. So essentially say, okay, here's the face, right, this is a female, this is a male, and then basically the system begins to sort of try to learn whether it's male or female, right? So here, for instance, you can see, okay, there's a male, right? Yeah, appears to be male. There's the age range, etc. We can go to the next one, right? So there, it's this face here, right? That appears to be female. Okay, it's this one here. That appears to be female as well. They also built in celebrity recognition for some reason. So there's Jeff Bezos. This is another co-founder. But actually, you can sort of play around uploading photos of sports figures and things like that, and kind of see it picking them out. And finally, facial comparison, right? So if you want to find out, right? So for instance, here we have two images. Here's a reference face, comparison faces. Notice it basically finds this girl in that picture. It says, yeah, this face here matches that face in the picture, right? It didn't match that one. It didn't match that one, right? Similarly, we could say, okay, search for this girl here, right? Again, yep, we got the similarity there, and not on the other ones. Okay, so the demo's really cool because you can kind of, play around with that and all that. Like I said, let's take a look at the coding side, because you look at this, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. It actually isn't. Okay, it couldn't be simpler. Okay, let's start with, I'll start with, what do I want to start with? Yeah, that one's kind of complicated. Let's actually, you know what, let's do labels. That one's actually a little smaller. All right, so, labels.py. All right, so like before, I want to make sure to import Bodo 3, and I'll probably actually be making use of pprint, or possibly. So I have this image helpers.py. Okay, so this is some code that I wrote, or actually I kind of ripped off from, modified and ripped off the internet. So there's basically two functions in here. Okay, so the first function allows me to get raw image data given a URL. Okay, and so you can see I basically pass in a URL, and then I use the requests module to simply get that URL, and then this is basically how you get the raw contents of that. So I grab the content from the response, and then I just simply return that content. Okay. Here's grabbing an image from a file directly. Okay, so and we'll see kind of, because basically Rekognition, generally the sort of recommended or preferred way of dealing with the images is to throw them in an S3 bucket. And you could certainly do that. I could actually grab the images, throw them in a bucket, and then provide that. But having these makes it a little easier to kind of play around with different ideas and so forth and test out in code. All right. So the way of using that module, same thing as using, for instance, either the built-in modules or the module that we installed. That is, I just give it the name of. So the module name, notice, is just the name of the file without the py on it. Okay, and so doing that means now I have access to those particular functions. Okay, so I will start off. I'll create a client with Bodo 3 client, and say that I'm going to use Rekognition. So this now client basically allows me to make the appropriate calls for Rekognition. Okay, so for instance, the call that we may want, right? So I can say client detect labels. And then I need, and then you'll see basically we have these various keyword parameters, okay? So a keyword parameter, basically here's a keyword, image. So the image is just the following map, right? So these curly braces inside Python allow me to create a map, an associative array, if you will, etc. So the map that I'm going to create, basically for my image, I need to specify the raw bytes. Okay. And so the bytes are, well, essentially I'm going to need to load that up. So I'll have something like this. Let's do image URL. All right. How about this? I don't know. Okay, so there's the URL. I'll dump that in here. Okay. The image bytes variable, which I'll basically use there. I'll basically just call image helpers like so. So I've specified the URL. Basically, then I read the file from online and pass that along to the detect labels function. Then I would need to grab the response. So I'll just call it recresp. Again, the variable name is up to you. And let's take a look at what we get. Okay. So having done that, let me run labels. And here's the data that we get back. Okay. It's effectively JSON, right? So notice, basically it's a map where I have one key, labels, right? So what labels? Oh, there's field there's grass, there's grassland, plant, meadow, blah, blah, blah. There's the confidence level. You can actually adjust the confidence level as well. So what you can actually do here is I can say min confidence and pass in some value. So by default, min confidence is 50%, but I could actually sort of turn it all the way down to, say, for instance, 1 to get even things that it's sort of less certain of if I wanted to, right? And then notice it sort of gives me some additional data about the connection and all of that, right? But there are the actual fields. And so you can sort of, I could actually make this sort of prettier if I wanted to too, right? To say, okay, all right, okay, let's call it label in rec response sub labels. Okay, so basically that gives me this much here. And then I can say, all right, so then I'll just say print label, right? So that would give me one of these things itself, and if all I want is that part there, then basically what I need is label sub name. Comment out that. And there it is. 17 lines of Python code with plenty of white space. Okay. Let's take it further. And so, you know, we can certainly, and you can search for other types of images as well. What kind of it, give me a search term.
Legs, probably. Who would recognize legs on this image?
Pardon?
This legs, nature.
Oh, the legs one.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know if it'll recognize legs. Let's see. Right, so there is the image. That's kind of why I set this up this way, because then I can do this. So Control D basically creates a copy of that. Then I can comment out that one and put in the new URL. Right, so it got it guessed child or kid. It got shoe. It got footwear. I don't know why it got smile and laughing. That's sort of person, people, right? Human. Yeah, yeah. It's almost scary.
So what about the files that are in our PC?
What's that?
If the image file is in
If the image, yes. So we're gonna do that. So let me create another one. What I'll actually do to kind of speed it up. Let me do copy, paste, and so this one I'm gonna call face detect. Okay, so so I have all the same imports and all of that. I do still want to do that stuff, except now I'm actually going to use some local files. So I have this this image directory here where I have a couple of photos. Actually, there's photos of myself, and so for instance, you know, I have, yeah, right. So there's an image of me, and there's some other ones as well. So we can kind of test to see it detecting faces and what it sort of tells us about those faces and different kinds of things. All right, so so the file name, notice it's in the images folder here, and so I guess we'll just let's start with portrait.jpg. right? So there, instead, what we want is, okay. So that loads up, that basically loads up the image from the local file as opposed to loading it from the internet. Okay, now this time I don't want detect labels. The function that I actually want is detect faces. And this one doesn't necessarily take a, doesn't have a min confidence for it, so I actually don't need that. And so let's kind of go on from here. So again, don't need this stuff. Let's see what it gives us back. Right, so just do a simple detect faces on that, print out the value, and then we can try that. So where's face detect, and let's go ahead and run that. So there's the default information that it gives us. So notice, first of all, face details. So it gives me a bounding box, right? That's actually how they're. So when they're using in the demo, basically that's how they're drawing a square around that, right? So if I go back to the demo, where is it? Here. Yeah, and if I go to, actually, let me do this. I'll go to, yeah, there's facial analysis. So for instance, if I was in here, right, we can see, right? So the way it's actually getting this box is based on that. Okay, so they basically get those coordinates, end up drawing those on there. Notice landmarks, right? So it knows where my left eye is, where my right eye is. I don't know what. Oh, the nose, right? Left side of the mouth, right side of the mouth. Notice it actually kind of figures out kind of the orientation of my head, basically, the pose, the pitch, the roll, the yaw. Gives me some quality metrics, but we seem to be missing a bunch of stuff, right? Like where is like male, age range, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, so the way that basically, if you look at the documentation, what you'll find out is there's another parameter here. And that's attributes, and so I can specify a list of strings. In this case, so I'll say all, and this will give me all the information about the image rather than just what we're seeing here. So now when I run this, okay, so there's the age range. I'm 47, so yeah, it kind of got that, right? Yes, I don't have a beard, right? Emotions, right? Notice it actually gives me a list of possible emotions, right? So it says looks happy, 2.6 percent value for calm, so maybe not, and a 0.7 value for confused, yeah, so not so much. Eyeglasses, no, I'm not wearing eyeglasses. My eyes were open. There's the gender, right? Scrolling down. Okay, and smile, sunglasses, etc. Okay. So let's play around with this some. Let me show you what happens when there are multiple faces. So if there's multiple faces, it picks them all out. It'll actually, from what I understand, it'll actually pick out 15 of them. Okay, so if you have more than 15 faces, it's not going to find those. So here, okay, so it got me, it got my wife, my mother-in-law, seemed to get a couple of these spectators in the background, right? And again, you can kind of see basically the individual faces and the data about them, right? Oh, I'm looking very young in that photo, apparently.
So what about the other spectators? Why is not detecting them? Like there's a man in a black t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, it may be that person was that it's just the image was too small and might be too blurry that in the background. That's why it's not picking it out, etc. Right? So we can use this again. We can kind of use this and kind of play around with different things. So here's what I actually so I'll show you kind of what I built. Actually, you know what? You don't need to watch me type this out. Let me just do this. I can do it. All right. So here, I have, so basically what I'm doing, take a look, right? So first of all, we say, okay, get, for every face deets in the response face details, right? So notice, I come to here, here's face details, that gives me, notice the opening square bracket here basically means an array, because if there's multiple people, multiple faces in the image, it will give me information for each one of those. So this basically says, okay, for each one of those faces, do that. Then I start constructing a format string, right? So I start off, I say, okay, so here's a string. Notice I have inside these curly braces basically placeholders that I'm going to use, right? So anything in here you'll see are essentially placeholders. So I'll have gender, age, low age, high age, right? Then I look at the values for whether there's a mustache and beard, right? So if there's both a mustache and a beard, then I add into that string it has a mustache and a beard. If it's just mustache, we add that. If it's just beard, we add that. Okay. Then sunglasses and or eyeglass detection are listed here, and also a thing for the emotion. Okay, so I build up this whole big format string, including some information about, again, beard, mustache, glasses, and so forth. And then here's how I print that out. So to use the format string, I just use the format string dot format, and then for each one of these placeholders, gender, low age, high age, etc., I have a keyword parameter for that, right? So the gender is face deets gender sub value, right? How did I get that? Again, so I come to here. Here's the face details for one person. If I scroll down, there's gender, right? And then inside there's the value. Right, so that's how I access that particular field. And so you can see each one of those. So if I change this to right, there's that photo, the photo that we were just looking at here, right? So remember, we saw this found 5 faces and so forth. So let's actually take a look and see what this gives us. Oh, yes. That would be why, because there I was actually using, so let's go back to this one. Yep, use the weekend and that.
Is there any specific order in the array?
Sorry?
Is there any specific order in the return array? So it's like first people that are on the front will be...
Yeah, I'm not sure about what specific order the results come back. I mean, again, and you do actually, as we saw, I mean, you do literally get the bounding, so you can again match that to the photos and stuff. What I may actually do is kind of do up a little example that actually takes that bounding box and draws it on. It requires another Python library and doing some image manipulation, but it is fairly doable, right? So notice male, age, yeah, as we saw, I look very young there, look happy. There's female, right? Female in that age, wearing glasses, looks angry. Which one is that? Who looked angry? That person's hat. Oh, my mother. Really? I don't think my mother-in-law looks angry. But anyways, yeah. Maybe Amazon knows something I don't. Okay, right? And then the various other people as well.
Does Amazon charges us for this?
Yeah. So yeah, we can look at. So free tier, you can analyze 5,000 images a month. So yeah, not too bad. And then beyond that, you can see, right? So then once you have to pay, yeah. So to process 1 million images in a month, it costs $1. Oh, $1 per 1,000 images processed. So not too bad. Let me show you. So let me show you a couple of these other ones that I have here as well. So the other one, so the last one that I had here is celebs.
Sir, does celeb, how it is matching, AWS has created its own database of celebrities, or it is?
Well,
using
yeah.
someone
So actually, so let's see. Let me show you.
IMDb's or someone else?
Yep. So here is here's a celebrity identifier. So again, you can see, right, basically calls this recognize celebrities function. You again pass in the particular bytes and so forth. So here, I'm printing out some. I'll show you. Do. Must be the big image. Oh yeah, this is right. So here's the kind of data that we get back. Again, so it identifies faces, landmarks, etc. It also gives me IMDb information. So the particular image that this one is using is this here. It's the Trumps. Okay. So I kind of I paired that the output down just so you can kind of take a look there.
How are you commenting the whole bunch of lines?
Control / allows you to comment or uncomment lines. Right. So notice it actually didn't figure out that Donald Trump was in there. Interestingly enough, I think it thought he was Jerry Leonard. But then and then we have the rest of these. And notice it will in a lot of cases it provides links to IMDb information. Right. And again, so you can kind of play around with these programs just to show you. I didn't actually write an example of the face comparison, but I can kind of show you this with some of the images that I have. So, for instance, here's this. So this picture was taken, I think, like in February or something. This picture is like about from 7 years ago. Notice it doesn't think I look like me. Okay, so what is interesting, so you notice here, sunglasses don't throw it off, right? So it actually figured out that that's actually me, but no, I'm not my mother-in-law, so that's good. Yeah, different haircut is, and it is still actually figuring that out. Let's see, I can't remember if this one has figured it out or not. Yeah, this one didn't quite figure it out. So you can kind of get a sense of it working and all that. I mean, the demo's actually, right, so there, yes. Again, it figured out that I'm me and that I'm not the other people.
What if I put your this reference face image in the celebrity one? Will it give me your name?
Most likely not. Let's see. Yeah. I'm not that important.
Those group of celebrities, they kind of select from internet movies.
Right. Yeah. So if you read the documentation on the celebrity recognition, they claim that it's movie stars, that it's also they do claim sports figures. So the sports figures wouldn't be an IMDb. I mean, with some of the links we see the IMDb things. So whatever. But yeah, I mean, and you could probably do some research on see. But yeah, so that's Amazon Rekognition, and as I said, not a lot of code to be able to take advantage of that. Question.
User is the same from Facebook. I think Facebook is DTR or the.
Well, right. I mean, so Facebook basically. I mean, so the problem of identifying a face in an image Of basically finding the part that is a face is really a well-solved problem these days. There's plenty of open source architecture, there's plenty of open source programs and frameworks that basically will let you do that. Basically say, okay, here is a particular face, right? Facebook, of course, has taken it even further because it also does that sort of face, that sort of facial recognition. Basically typically uses the tagging that people do, so it figures out a face, and remember, you could say, okay, this person is that face, and so forth. So they actually use that to then try to do facial matching and stuff like that, right? Certainly crime systems will make use of this kind of thing as well. So there are a number of these kind of solutions around. Here, Amazon basically just said, okay, we've created this and we have the API. So now here's an API to make use of it for whatever purposes you want to use it for.
Yeah, but Amazon did use Facebook data for training neural.
No, I wouldn't imagine they used Facebook data. Amazon. I would imagine they probably used. They probably were using stuff from their. If you're a Prime member, you have access to what's called Prime Photos, where basically you could all the photos you take on your phone will automatically get stored in Amazon's cloud. So I would imagine they actually made use of some of that data to be able to do those kinds of things. Other questions and issues? All right, see you next time.
So